discussing the Oak Island, also known as the Money Pit Mystery. Oak Island is a 140-acre, privately owned island in Lunenburg County on the south shore of Nova Scotia, Canada. The tree-covered island is one of about 360 small islands in Mahone Bay and rises about 36 feet above sea level. The island is located 660 feet from shore and is now connected to the mainland by a causeway with a gate on it. 1795, 3 young men, Daniel McGinnis, John Smith, and Anthony Vaughn, had been given the day off from working the family farms, and they rode out to have a look at the island. The island had been the scene of spectral lights, and the teens thought that maybe pirates had been there to bury their treasure. That same year, George Washington is the President of the United States. There are only 15 states for him to govern. The Industrial Revolution is only in its 5th year. We're talking a while ago. The 3 kids roamed Oak Island, walking through the trees and slowly making their way to the far side of the tiny landmass. They were looking for any sign of pirates and hopefully their loot. As they wandered around looking for pirate treasure, they found a depression in the ground. It looked as if a hole had been filled in with dirt, but the dirt had settled. Directly above this depression was an oak limb with an old wooden block hanging from it. A wooden block like you'd find on board an old sailing ship, like an old pirate ship maybe. The boys figured pirates had buried their treasure right under their feet, and all they need do is dig it up. The 3 dug down and found a layer of flagstones just 3 feet down. Surely the treasure had to be right there. They removed the layer of stones and continued digging down into the soft soil under their feet. Now the dirt on the sides of the hole they were digging was like clay. It was very hard, very compact. But the dirt where they were digging was softer and loose, as if someone else had already been digging in that spot. At 10 feet, they came to a wooden floor, huge oak beams that spanned the 13-foot wide excavation. By this time, the boys were expected back home, so they packed it in and rode back to the mainland, hoping to come back the next day with reinforcements. I wonder what the dinner conversation was like that night around the 3 different households. The boys must have made their case, because the next morning there were more people, armed with shovels, ready to become rich beyond their wildest dreams. Using equipment available to them and lots of back-breaking effort, they pried the beams up, only to find more dirt beneath. They dug down to 20 feet, where they found another oak beam deck spanning their passage. They simply must be right on top of the vast and magnificent treasure. There could be no other explanation. Under the deck, more dirt. They had removed dirt down to the 30-foot level, only to find a 3rd log deck. The treasure hunters came to a difficult decision. They all had crops to tend, they had animals to care for. Perhaps just a hint of a curse was mentioned. Pirate treasure was always guarded by evil spirits, and bad things might befall the farmers turned treasure hunters. For whatever reason, the pit was filled in and abandoned, and all the would-be millionaires returned to their farms. It took the 3 discoverers 8 years, but they did return. It was now 1803. Along with the Onslow Company, formed for the purpose of the search, they began digging again. They quickly got back to the 30-foot point that had been reached 8 years previous, and then they continued down. finding a layer of oak logs at every 10 feet. Besides the beams, at the 40-foot level, a layer of charcoal was found. At 50 feet, there was a layer of putty, and at 60 feet, a layer of coconut fiber. Now, coconut fiber is a really odd thing to find because the nearest coconut tree was about 1,500 miles away. At 90 feet, one of the most puzzling clues was found. A stone inscribed with mysterious writing. The writing looked like nothing any of the Onslow Company had ever seen before. They took a rubbing of the stone. It's where you place a sheet of paper on top of the object and then you rub a piece of charcoal back and forth until a representation of the image is transferred onto the paper. This is called a rubbing. You can do this with tombstones and anything that has deep carved letters in it. They sent the rubbing off to the nearest college for translation. The stone was supposed to translate into saying, 40 feet down, 2 million pounds is buried. 2 million pounds of gold or silver would be quite a find. 2 million pounds of lead would still be worth digging up. You could sell lead for $10 a pound on today's market. 2 million pounds of lead, you're still looking at a good income. After pulling up the layer of oaks at 90 feet and continuing on, they noticed water began to seep into the pit. By the next day, the pit was filled with water up to the 33-foot level. Pumping just didn't seem to work. Well, the next year, a new pit was dug parallel to the original, down to 100 feet. From there, they tried tunneling over to the money pit. Again, flood water poured in, and the search was abandoned. As it turns out, an ingenious booby trap had been sprung. The Onslow Company had inadvertently unplugged a 500-foot waterway that had been dug from the pit to nearby Smith's Cove by the pit's designers. As quickly as the water could be pumped out, it was refilled by the sea. We're going to take a brief pause here for a few commercials and station identification. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Ederby Day, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Truck. Life is too short to drink bad coffee. Next Saturday, September 10th, at 7 p.m., Lourdes James will be reading excerpts from her book on poetry at the Organic Man Coffee Shop. Stop on by and have a listen.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arkanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arkanasa Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back to Strange Things. Now, we'd just been talking about the fact that they had somehow sprung a booby trap and the money pit was now being flooded with seawater. This discovery, however, is a small part of the intricate plan by the unknown designers to keep people away from whatever is hidden below. 1849, the next company to attempt to extract the treasure, the Truro Company, was founded and the search began again. They quickly dug down to 86 feet, only to be flooded. Deciding to try to figure out what was buried before attempting to extract it, the Truro Company switched to drilling core samples. The drilling produced some encouraging results. At 98 feet, the drill went through a spruce platform. Then it encountered 4 inches of oak, then 22 inches of what characterized as metallic pieces, next 8 inches of oak, another 22 inches of metal, 4 inches of oak, and another layer of spruce. The conclusion was they had drilled through 2 casks or chests filled with coins. Upon pulling up the drill, they found splinters of oak and strands of what looked like coconut husk, but no coins were recovered. They didn't have a core drill, only something akin to an auger bit. One account of the drilling also mentioned that 3 small gold links, as from a chain, were brought up. Unfortunately, no one knows what happened to the chain. Interestingly, the earth encountered beneath the bottom spruce platform was loose, indicating that the pit may have gone even deeper. A later group of searchers would find out just how much deeper. The Truro Company returned in 1850 with plans to dig another parallel hole and then tunnel over to the money pit. Just like before, as they tunneled over, water began to rush in. They brought in pumps to try to get rid of the water, but it was impossible to keep the water out. During the pumping, someone noticed that at Smith's Cove, during low tide, there was water coming out of the beach. This find led to an amazing discovery. The beach was artificial. It turns out that the pit designers had created a drain system spread over 145-foot length of beach, which resembled the fingers of a hand. Each finger was a channel dug into the clay under the beach and lined with rocks. The channels were then filled with beach rocks, covered with several inches of eel grass, and then covered by several more inches of coconut fiber. The effects of this filtering system was that the channels remained clear of silt and sand, while water was still allowed to flow amongst them. The fingers met at a point inland where they fed seawater into a sloping channel, which eventually joined the muddy pit some 500 feet away. Later investigations show this underground channel to have been 4 feet wide, 2.5 feet high, lined with stones, and meeting the money pit between the depths of 95 to 110 feet. To the Truro Company, the answer was now simple. Just block off the water from the beach and dig out the treasure. The first attempt was to build a dam just off the beach at Smith's Cove, drain the water, and then dismantle the drain channels. Unfortunately, a storm blew up and destroyed the dam before they could finish. An interesting note, the remains of an old dam were found when building the new one. Someone had already done a lot of work in Smith's Cove. The next plan was to dig a pit 100 feet or so inland in the hopes of meeting with the water channel underground, at which point they could plug the channel. This scheme too failed, and this was the last attempt by the Truro Company to uncover the secrets of Oak Island. The next attempt at securing the treasure was made in 1861 by the Oak Island Association. First, they cleared out the money pit down to 80 feet. Then they ran a new hole to the east of the pit, hoping to intercept the channel from the sea. The new shaft was dug out to 120 feet without hitting the channel and then abandoned. A second shaft was run, this one to the west, down to 118 feet. They then attempted to tunnel over to the money pit. Again, water started to enter the pit as well as the money pit. Bailing was attempted and appeared to work, and then something fell. Something came loose. The bottom fell out. Water rushed into the shaft, and the bottom of the money pit dropped over 15 feet. Everything in the money pit had fallen further down the hole. The big question was, why and how far? Over the next several years, different companies tried to crack the mystery unsuccessfully. They dug more shafts, tried to fill in the drain on the beach, built a new dam, which also was destroyed by another storm, and drilled more core samples. They met with little success. In 1857, there appeared a newspaper account of a group digging for the treasure of the pirate Captain Kidd on Oak Island. Treasure hunter J.B. Macaulay of Truro, Nova Scotia, wrote that the early settlers of Oak Island area had brought with them a story of a dying sailor of Captain Kidd's crew, claiming that 2 million pounds value in treasure had been buried on the island. The next excavation attempt, made in 1861 by the new company called the Oak Island Association, resulted in the collapse of the bottom of the shaft into either a natural cavern or another booby trap underneath. It was later theorized that the imagined chests had fallen into a deep void and that the pit may have been booby-trapped to protect the treasure. The first fatality during excavation occurred when the boiler of a pump engine burst. The company gave up when their funds were exhausted in 1864. Unfortunately, the man killed was never recorded, so we have no idea what his name had been. 1893. A man named Fred Blair, along with a group called the Oak Island Treasure Company, began their search. Their first task was to investigate the caved-in pit. Discovered in 1878 about 350 feet east of the money pit. The cave-in appears to have been a shaft dug out by the designer of the money pit, perhaps as a ventilation shaft for the digging of the flood tunnel. It apparently intersected or closely passed the flood tunnel while it was being cleared by the treasure company. It started to flood at the depth of 55 feet and then was abandoned. Over the next several years, the Oak Island Treasure Company would dig more shafts, pump more water, and still get nowhere. In 1897, they did manage to clear out the money pit down to 111 feet, where they actually saw the entrance of the flood tunnel, temporarily. However, the water worked its way through again and filled the pit. The treasure company then decided that they would attempt to seal off the flow of water from Smith Cove by dynamiting the flood tunnel. 5 charges were set off in holes drilled near the flood tunnel. They didn't work. The water flowed into the muddy pit as rapidly as ever. At the same time, a new set of core samples were drilled at the pit itself. The results were surprising. At 126 feet, wood was struck and then iron. This material is probably part of the material that fell during the crash of the pit. On other drillings, the wood was encountered at 122 feet, and the iron was missed completely, indicating that the material may be laying in a haphazard way due to its fall. Between 130 and 151 feet, and also between 160 and 171 feet, a blue clay was found, which consisted of clay, sand, and water. This clay can be used to form a watertight seal and is probably the same putty that was found at the 50-foot level of the pit. The major find was in the gap between the putty layers. A cement vault was discovered. The vault itself was 7 feet high with 7-inch thick walls. Inside the vault, the drill first struck wood, and then a void several inches high, and an unknown substance. Next, a layer of soft metal was reached, then almost 3 feet of metal pieces, and then more soft metal. When the drill was brought back up, another twist was added to the whole mystery. Attached to the auger was a small piece of sheepskin parchment with the letters VI, UI, or WI. What the parchment is a small piece of is still in question. More convinced than ever that a great treasure was beneath the island, the treasure company began sinking more shafts in an attempt to get to the cement vault. They all met with failure due to flooding. In May of 1899, yet another startling discovery was made. There was a second flood tunnel. This one was located in the South Shore Cove. The designers had been more ingenious and had done more work than previously thought. Though this find certainly strengthened the case that something valuable was buried below, it didn't bring anyone closer to actually finding the treasure. Blair and the Oak Island Treasure Company continued to sink their new shafts and drill more core samples, but no progress was made and no new information obtained. Between 1900 and 1936, several attempts were made to obtain the treasure. All met with no success. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, you may have heard of him, one of our presidents, was stirred by family stories originating from his famous sailing and trading godfather and Oak Island financier Warren Delano Jr. He began following the Oak Island mystery from late 1909 to early 1910 and continued to follow and keep close tabs on progress until his death in 1945. Throughout his political career, he maintained Oak Island and kept close ties to the recovery attempts and development. He privately devised a secret plan to visit Oak Island as president in 1939, while being in nearby Halifax, Nova Scotia. However, the fog, delay, and the international situation leading up to World War II made it impossible. Australian-American actor Errol Flynn was invested in the Oak Island treasure dig. For those of you unfamiliar with Errol Flynn, he's the first actor to swing onto a tree and say, "Welcome to Sherwood Forest." He played Robin Hood as well as many Hollywood heroes in several movies in the 30s and 40s. Actor John Wayne was an investor in a drilling equipment manufacturer used on Oak Island and offered the use of his equipment to help solve the mystery. William Vincent Astor, member of the prominent Astor family and heir to the fortune after his father died on the Titanic, took a passive interest in digging for Oak Island treasure. And then there's Rear Admiral Richard Byrd. He maintained an investment in and monitored the status of Oak Island exploration and treasure hunting. Admiral Byrd advised Franklin Roosevelt on Oak Island and formed a relationship over their work, forming the United States Antarctic Service as an arm of the federal government, which Byrd nominally in command of. 1928, a New York newspaper printed a feature story about the strange history of the island. Gilbert Hedden, a New Jersey operator of steel fabricating concern, saw the article and was fascinated by the engineering problems involved in recovering the unknown but well dreamed of treasure. In 1931, excavations by William Chappell sank a 163-foot shaft 12 to 14 feet to the southwest of what he believed was the site of the 1897 shaft, close to the original pit. See, by this time, so many shafts had been dug, the original money pit was lost in the massive openings. At 127 feet, a number of artifacts, including an axe, an anchor fluke, a pick, were found. The pick has been identified as a Cornish miner's pole pick. By this time, the entire area around the money pit was littered with debris and refuse of numerous prior excavation attempts, so the owner of the pick could not really be identified. Gilbert Hedden collected books and articles on the island and made 6 trips there. He even ventured to England to converse with Harold T. Wilkins, the author of Captain Kidd and his Skeleton Island, believing he could find a link between the Oak Island and the map in Wilkins' book. See, the map of Oak Island resembles the map in Captain Kidd and his Skeleton Island, only turned upside down. Hedden purchased the southeast end of the island, and he began digging in the summer of 1935. Hedden was no more successful than any of his predecessors. We'll pause here for a brief station identification and a couple of commercials. We'll be right back, so don't go away. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Iturbide, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Trike. Life is too short to drink bad coffee. Saturday, September 10th at 7 p.m., Lourdes James will be reading excerpts from her book on poetry at the Organic Man Coffee Shop. Stop on by and give it a listen.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arkanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arkanasa Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back from those brief commercials. Hope you're enjoying tonight's story, tonight's show. The Oak Island mystery has been going on for about 240 years now, and we know about as much today as they did when they first started digging. The next treasure hunter was Irwin Hamilton. He began his search in 1938 by clearing out previous shafts and doing some exploratory drilling. 1939, while drilling, 2 more discoveries were made. The first was there were rocks and gravel at 190 feet. According to Hamilton, this was foreign, and therefore it had to have been placed there by someone. Second finding came from clearing out an earlier shaft down to 176 feet. At this point, a layer of limestone was encountered and drilled through. The drilling brought up oak splinters. Apparently, there was wood underneath the limestone. 1959, Robert Restall and his 18-year-old son came to Oak Island and signed a contract with one of the property owners. They attempted to seal off what was thought to be the flood tunnel in Smith's Cove. August 17th, 1965, after digging a shaft down to 27 feet at Smith's Cove, Restall was overcome by carbon monoxide fumes from a gasoline engine operating at the top of the shaft. Restall's son then went down the shaft and he also lost consciousness. Cale Grasser, Restall's partner, and workers Cyril Hiltz and Andy DeMont then went down as well. A visitor to the site named Edward White had himself lowered on a rope into the shaft and was able to bring out DeMont. The other 4 men died. No one working on the island knew about carbon monoxide and how it affected the human body. An account of an excavation of the money pit appeared in the January 1965 issue of Reader's Digest magazine. 2 young kids living in Michigan read the article and were both hooked on treasure hunting. Rick and Marty Lagina had no idea where their new interest was going to take them. That same year, Robert Dunfield leased portions of the island. Dunfield built a causeway from the mainland out to the island in order to bring in a 70-ton crane, a bulldozer, and other heavy equipment. He dug out the pit area to a depth of 134 feet and a width of 100 feet. The soil removed was carefully inspected for artifacts, but nothing of interest was recovered. Dunfield attempted to block the inflow of water at Smith's Cove and may have succeeded. Then on the south side of the island, a trench was dug in the hope of intercepting the other water tunnel and blocking it off. The flood tunnel wasn't found, but an unknown shaft was, possibly one dug by the designers of the pit. It had been filled back in, but once again, the soil consistency didn't match the dirt around it. The shaft apparently went down to 45 feet and stopped. Its purpose was unknown. Dunfield's other findings were based on drilling. It was determined that at 140 feet there was a 2-foot thick layer of limestone, then a 40-foot void. At the bottom of the void was bedrock. This information matched with a drilling done back in 1955. There seemed to be a large natural underground cavern, something apparently common with limestone around the world. Dunfield, like those who came before, ran out of money before running out of mysteries. In January 1967, Daniel C. Blankenship, David Tobias, Robert Dunfield, and Fred Noland formed a syndicate for exploration on Oak Island. They formed the Triton Alliance Limited and purchased most of the island. Some of the previous landholders, such as Mel Chappell, became shareholders in Triton. Dan Blankenship used dowsing rods to find a location for the next attempt. He walked back and forth using the rods until they crossed. X marks the spot. This was to be the next big excavation. Borehole 10X was the result of his efforts. Borehole 10X, a 237-foot tube lined with steel, which was sunk to 180 feet, northwest of the pit. During the digging, several apparently artificial cavities were found down to 230 feet. The hole was reinforced using steel tank cars, stood on end, and sunk into the pit to hold the dirt back. Then a concrete tube with a 23-inch access opening was extended to the bottom. A camera was lowered down to the bedrock cavity at 230 feet and it returned some amazing images. At first, a severed hand could be seen floating in the water. Later, 3 chests and various tools could be made out. Finally, a human body was detected. After seeing the images, the decision was made to send a diver down for a look. Dan Blankenship went to see what was down there. Dan Blankenship has been described as a tough character. Tough isn't a big enough word. Once he set his mind to do something, no one was big enough to stop him. As he dove down through the murk, frigid water, the side suddenly gave way. The tube he was in was collapsing in around him. He had an intercom hooked to his face mask and yelled to be pulled up. His son Dave Blankenship immediately reversed the cable holding his father and pulled him to safety just seconds before the hole closed. Dave Blankenship still has a grudge against the engineer who claimed the steel sides would hold up. Due to the collapse of 10X, work came to a halt once more. Daniel Blankenship managed to dig out more of the mystery shaft found by Bob Dunfield. It turned out that the shaft did go beyond 45 feet. Blankenship found a hand-wrought nail and a washer at 60 feet. At 90 feet, he met a layer of rock in stagnant water. He assumed this was part of the South Water Tunnel, but couldn't explore further because the shaft could not be stopped from caving in. A pair of wrought iron scissors were discovered, buried below the drains at the Smith's Cove. It was determined that the scissors were Spanish-American, probably made in Mexico. They were about 300 years old. He also found a heart-shaped stone. Smith's Cove revealed some more secrets in 1970. While building a new cofferdam, they discovered the remains of what appeared to be the original builder's cofferdam. The findings included several logs, 2 feet thick, up to 65 feet long. They were marked every 4 feet with Roman numerals carved into them, and some contained wooden pins or nails. The wood had been carbon dated to 250 years ago. The western end of the island has also revealed several items. 2 wooden structures, along with wrought iron nails and metal straps, were found at the western beach. 9 feet below the beach, a pair of leather shoes were unearthed. The Money Pit Mystery was the subject of an episode of the television series In Search Of that first aired on January 18, 1979, bringing the legend of Oak Island to a wider audience. Yes, I managed to watch that show. It was hosted by Leonard Nimoy from Star Trek fame. In 1983, the Triton Alliance began a lawsuit against Fred Nolan over the ownership of several lots on the island and causeway access to the island. 2 years later, Nolan's ownership of the lots were confirmed, but he was ordered to pay damages for interference with the Triton's tourist business. The case was appealed and Triton lost again in 1989, but the damages owed by Nolan were reduced. This really drove a wedge between Fred Nolan and Dan Blankenship. During the 1990s, further exploration was stalled because of legal battles between the Triton Partnership and a lack of financial resources. 2005, a portion of the island was for sale for an estimated $7 million. The group called the Oak Island Tourism Society had hoped the government of Canada would purchase the island, but a group of American businessmen in the drilling industry did so instead. It was announced in April 2006 that Rick and Marty Lagina from Michigan had purchased a 50% stake in Oak Island Tourists for an undisclosed amount of money. The shares sold to the Michigan partners were previously owned by David Tobias. The remaining shares are still owned by Dan Blankenship. July 2010, Blankenship and the Lagina brothers announced on their website that the Nova Scotia Department of Natural Resources and the Department of Tourism, Culture, and Heritage had granted them a temporary treasure trove license, allowing them to resume activities until the 31st of December 2010. After December 2010, the department replaced the former Treasure Trove Act and replaced it with a new Oak Island Treasure Act. The new Oak Island Treasure Act came into effect on January 1st, 2011, and allowed for treasure hunting to continue on the island under the terms of a license issued by the Ministry of Natural Resources. Whole bunch of bureaucratic things that people have to put up with in order to dig for treasure on their own property. The Curse of Oak Island was first aired on January 5th, 2014. Now, this is a reality TV show covering the ongoing exploration and excavation of the island and the Money Pit. Using modern technology, the Lagina brothers, along with Dave and Dan Blankenship, and a dozen or so family and colleagues, entertain and enthrall us as they try to get to the bottom, both literally and figuratively, of the enigma. So far, it has come out that Oak Island may have started out as two separate islands that were formed into one. Then there's that weird swamp in the middle of the island that no one can get a handle on. They go in there with metal detectors, they get good solid readings, and then they dig down into the swamp, and there's nothing there. They've been in and out of that swamp so many times, it's not very pleasant to see some of the looks on their faces when it's announced they're going back to the swamp. Then there's that curse. The first time a curse came up, it was that all the oak trees had to be cut down before the island would give up its treasure. Well, they're coming pretty close. There are only 3 or 4 oak trees left on the entire island. And what about that thing where 7 men must die? I've read this curse on numerous web pages, as well as in dozens of books. But there's never a reference as to who made this curse and why 7 instead of, say, 10 or 12 must die. So far, the island has claimed 6 lives. Hopefully, the curse is just a wives' tale. When and where the first curse came up is as big a mystery as what's in the bottom of the Money Pit. We're going to take a brief pause here for station identification and a couple more of your favorite commercials. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Do you have skin? Would you like to take better care of it? Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and set up an appointment. Call 723-3019. If your vision isn't what it used to be, and you're not sure you're seeing Bigfoot or just your neighbor mowing his lawn, stop on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, just across the street from the Embassy Suites. You should be able to see what you're looking at. Looking for a great cup of coffee? Swing on by the Organic Man Coffee Truck, 1002 Iturbide, suite number 7. Not a coffee drinker? They have hot chocolate, hot tea, and sometimes muffins and cookies. It's a great place to meet your friends for a conversation or curl up in the corner with a good book. The Organic Man Coffee Truck. Life is too short to drink bad coffee. And don't forget, next Saturday, September 10th at 7 p.m., Lourdes James will be reading excerpts from her book on poetry. The Organic Man Coffee Shop. Stop on by and give a listen.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanelza Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanelza Radio.
You're listening to Strange Things with Chris James. And welcome back. Hope you've been enjoying tonight's show. Now, there are lots of theories about who built the Oak Island and what exactly may be at the bottom of the money pit. There's been a wide-ranging speculation about enthusiasts as to how the pit was formed and what it might contain. One theory is its pirate treasure. The earliest theory was that the pit held a pirate treasure buried by Captain Kidd, or maybe Blackbeard, or maybe even John Lafitte. Some believe that Kidd conspired with Henry Every, and Oak Island was used as a pseudo-community bank between the two. Folklore has it a man on his deathbed in early 18th century confessed to having been a member of Kidd's crew, and stated they had buried several chests of treasure on the island somewhere to the east of Boston. Another pirate theory involved Edward Teach. You may know him as Blackbeard, who claimed he buried his treasure where none but Satan and or himself could find it. The pirates are known for a lot of things, but building was not one of them. I doubt a ship full of men, most of who could neither read nor write, could have designed and built the extraordinary underground structure. And why would they have gone so deep? If you're a little short of cash and in need of a drink, you don't want to have to spend the next month digging up your wallet. Some say it was built by aliens. I don't think even Giorgio Tsoukalos would say it was aliens. Oh, but wait. He did say it was aliens. If it had been aliens, I would hope they would have been better at disguising their hidden treasure than what we've seen so far. Considering how many people have spent so much time and money with hardly anything to show, does give it another worldly slant. Giorgio Tsoukalos did say it was aliens on an episode of Ancient Aliens, Mysterious Places. Now, Hutton Pulitzer has a really interesting idea about the trees on Oak Island. Hutton Pulitzer has been on the show Curse of Oak Island. He's the guy that wears that really cool explorer-looking outfit. He showed up on several episodes telling about his theories. The area is pretty much full of oak trees. So what makes the trees on Oak Island any different? Well, normal oak trees are bushy and kind of rounded. The trees on Oak Island are tall with a flat canopy. They look different from any oak trees found in any part of North America. The trees in question look exactly like oak trees found in northern Africa. Tall, skinny, with a flat canopy. Then there's that 90-foot stone. The one with the weird symbols carved on it that was supposed to say 40 feet below 2 million pounds are buried. The carvings look like African writing. African writing from the same area where the trees might have come from. The idea Mr. Pulitzer came up with is there could be a connection to the money pit and King Solomon's treasure. Yes, the King Solomon that built the temple in Jerusalem. There are hieroglyphics found in Egypt that depict the men who sailed the globe. And then there's the Mi'kmaq Indians that are in and around the area of Nova Scotia. They have artwork depicting men with tattoos that look just like ancient Phoenician priests. If you'd like to read more about Mr. Pulitzer's ideas, check out his book, Solomon's Secret, which is available from historyheretic.org. That's thehistoryheretic.org. Solomon's Secret, well worth a read. There's also the idea that historical manuscripts or artwork was hidden away on the island to protect the identity of the authors. See, writers and actors back in ancient Europe were somewhat scorned and frowned upon, and if you were a lord or a lady and you were performing in a play or writing poetry, people thought you were kind of weird, and nobody wanted to be thought of as weird. But let's face it, that is an awful lot of work just to hide such a minuscule prize. You could simply hide them in a castle and be done with it. Who could have built the money pit? Think about it. Before 1795, they didn't have power equipment to dig a 13 by 13 foot pit over 235 feet deep. Plus the booby traps that caused the pit to flood. Who could have dug up half of the island, laid down coconut husk, and then rebuilt the island on top of it? There is so much coconut fiber, 2 ships filled with nothing but coconut fiber would have to have been used to haul it from the Caribbean all the way to the Mahone Bay, at a time when this sort of thing just wasn't done, at least not by ordinary people. Who not only could have, but would have gone to such lengths to hide some as of yet unknown treasure? Well, how about the Knights Templar? They built extravagant churches all over Europe. They seem to have known some engineering techniques long before the Industrial Revolution, and they were somewhat fanatical about, well, just about everything. On Friday the 13th, October 1307, when the Templars were rounded up and tortured to death, none of their treasure was found, and the fleet of sailing ships they had slipped away, never to be seen again. Now, when the Templars were rounded up, they were not rounded up all over Europe. That is a misconception a lot of people have. They were arrested in France by Philip le Bel, who was the king of France at the time and who was also broke. His idea was, if he had the Templars arrested, he would get a finder's fee in the form of some of their treasure. But as it turned out, they didn't find any treasure. Now the Templars were also in Germany. They were in Italy. Well, they were in every country in Europe just about. Only the Templars in France were actually arrested. The others faded into the woodwork. They may have taken the treasure with them. The Templars not only had the ability, but they had the desire to go to extreme lengths to hide their wealth in such a way as to be impossible for anyone to find it. Perhaps what's at the bottom of the pit was never meant to be recovered. If the treasure was something dangerous or sacred, like, say, the Ark of the Covenant, wouldn't it make sense to go through such bizarre extremes to hide it? Until Rick and Marty Lagina finish digging or run out of money, we may never know what is buried so deep under that small island in Nova Scotia. The Curse of Oak Island, season number 4, has been renewed. The release date is supposed to be August 4th, so tune into the History Channel for further developments. Maybe this time they'll finally get to the bottom of the pit and find out what's down there. Next week, we'll be discussing something closer to home, the Spider Rock Mystery. Tune in next Saturday, September 10th, to hear about another bizarre treasure hunt right here in the state of Texas. Until then, see y'all later. Hope you enjoyed the show.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man? They say murder 3. Strange things that happen here. How stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?